Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is Robert, and I saw Amanda disappear 3 meters ahead of me on the Cascade Ridge Trail at exactly 3:47 p.m. on October 13th, 2018. I know the exact time because I was checking my iPhone when she vanished into thin air, leaving nothing but the scent of copper pennies and a silence so complete it made my ears ring. I've been a ranger at Olympic National Park for 7 years, and I've always been the guy other rangers call when they need someone to figure out the weird shit. While Jake and Martinez rely on gut instinct and decades of experience, I'm the one with the laminated field guides, the GPS coordinates memorized down to the decimal point, and the scientific explanations for every strange noise in the woods. They tolerate me because my obsessive note-taking has solved more missing person cases than anyone wants to admit. That morning, I'd kissed my wife Sarah goodbye at 5:30 a.m., her sleepy mumble of, "Be safe, you beautiful nerd," still echoing as I drove my '08 Subaru Forester down the winding access road. Our 3-year-old daughter Emma had drawn me a crayon picture of a tree with a smiley face. "Daddy's work friend," she called it, and I'd tucked it into my breast pocket next to my emergency whistle. The call about Amanda came in at 2:15 p.m., 22 years old, marine biology student from University of Washington, last seen on Cascade Ridge collecting water samples for her thesis. Her boyfriend reported her overdue when she missed their 1 p.m. check-in call. Standard grid search protocol. But something about the boyfriend's voice, the way he kept saying she always calls, made my stomach twist. I found her camp at mile marker 4.7, textbook perfect setup. Quarter dome tent, properly guyed out and oriented away from prevailing winds. MSR Whisperlight stove, unused. Sleeping bag still in its stuff sack. No signs of struggle, no animal disturbance. Just emptiness that felt wrong, like walking into a house where someone had died but the body was missing. Her trail was easy to follow at first. Size 7, Merrell hiking boots, distinctive star pattern tread, leading northeast toward Thornton Creek. Every 200 meters I found evidence of her sample collection. Small holes in the creek bank where she'd taken soil cores, GPS coordinates written in waterproof ink on yellow tags. Methodical, scientific, just like I would have done it. That's when I started to like her. The trail became harder to follow as elevation increased. Granite scree doesn't hold prints well, and the afternoon wind was picking up, scattering the few leaves that might have shown disturbance. But I caught glimpses. A thread of blue Gore-Tex on a boulder, the faint outline of a boot print in a patch of mud. She was heading toward Widow's Point, a granite outcrop that offered the best view of the Thornton Creek watershed. At 3:45 p.m., I crested the final ridge and saw her. Amanda was standing on the granite ledge 20 feet ahead, her long brown hair whipping in the wind. She wore a blue Columbia jacket, dark hiking pants, and carried a yellow Osprey day pack. She was taking photos with what looked like a Canon DSLR, completely absorbed in her work. Alive. Safe. The relief made my knees weak. "Amanda," I called out, pulling my radio from my chest harness. "Amanda Chen? Your boyfriend's worried sick about you." She turned toward me and I saw her face clearly for the first time. Pretty in an understated way, with intelligent dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She looked confused, maybe a little embarrassed. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the thin mountain air. I lost track of time. My phone died around noon and the samples up here are incredible. Look at this mineral stratification. She gestured excitedly toward the rock face and I found myself smiling. A kindred spirit. Another person who got lost in the details, who understood that the world was more interesting when you actually paid attention to it. I was reaching for my radio to call off the search when my iPhone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "M's soccer game is at 5. Don't be late again, science boy. 3:47 p.m. according to the timestamp." I looked up from my phone, grinning, ready to tell Amanda we needed to head back so I could make my daughter's game. Amanda was gone. Not, had moved behind a boulder, gone. Not, had stepped out of sight. Gone. Gone, gone. The granite ledge where she'd been standing was empty. No footprints in the dust. No sound of retreating footsteps. No disturbance in the gravel. The wind had died to absolute stillness, and the only sound was my own breathing, suddenly harsh and rapid. I ran to the spot where she'd been standing, my Danner boots slipping on the smooth granite. Nothing. The edge dropped away into a 60-foot cliff, but there was no body below, no cry for help echoing up from the rocks. I leaned over as far as I dared, gripping the stone until my knuckles went white. "Amanda!" My voice cracked across the empty wilderness, bouncing off distant peaks and returning as a hollow mockery. "Amanda, where are you?" The silence that followed was wrong. Not just quiet, actively, malevolently silent. No bird calls, no insect buzzing, no wind through the pines. Even my radio static had died. It was like the world had been wrapped in cotton and left to suffocate. I pulled out my iPhone again, hands shaking as I checked the time. 3:47 p.m. That was impossible. I'd been looking at the ledge for at least 5 minutes, searching, calling her name, running to the cliff edge. But my phone insisted only seconds had passed since I'd read Sarah's text about Emma's soccer game. My scientific mind kicked in, offering rational explanations. Adrenaline could distort time perception. Shock could cause temporal displacement. But I'd checked my watch too, a reliable Casio G-Shock that had never failed me. And it also read 3:47. I forced myself to think systematically. I pulled out my field notebook, a waterproof write in the rain pad I'd carried for 7 years, and began documenting everything. Time of disappearance, weather conditions, exact location coordinates, physical evidence at the scene. That's when I realized Amanda's camera was still there. The Canon DSLR sat on the granite exactly where she'd been standing, as if she'd simply evaporated around it. I approached it carefully, using the pen from my notebook to avoid contaminating fingerprints. The camera was still on, the LCD screen showing the last photo she'd taken. It was a picture of me. Specifically, it was a picture of me looking down at my phone, reading Sarah's text. The timestamp on the photo read 3:47 p.m., just like everything else in this suddenly impossible world. But Amanda had been facing away from me when I looked up. She'd been photographing the rock formations. She couldn't have taken this picture without my knowledge, unless she'd never been facing away at all. My hands began to shake as I scrolled through the other photos on the camera. There were dozens of shots of rock formations, water samples, and mineral deposits, just like you'd expect from a graduate student's fieldwork. But every 10th photo or so was a picture of me. Me hiking up the trail 2 hours earlier. Me examining her abandoned campsite. Me following her tracks through the forest. Me calling her name. The final photo was the one that broke something fundamental in my understanding of reality. It was taken from above, showing me standing on the granite ledge, looking at the camera in my hands. But Amanda couldn't have taken it from above. There was nothing above us but empty sky. I looked up instinctively, scanning the cloudless October afternoon. Nothing. Then I looked back at the camera's LCD screen. 3:47 p.m. I checked my phone again. 3:47 p.m. My watch. 3:47 p.m. "No," I whispered. Then louder, "No, this is not happening." But even as I spoke, I felt something shift around me. The granite beneath my feet seemed to ripple like water, and the pine trees at the edge of my vision flickered like a bad video connection. The copper penny smell I'd noticed when Amanda disappeared was getting stronger, metallic and wrong, like blood on snowpack. I tried to move away from the ledge, but my feet wouldn't obey. Not paralyzed, I could feel my legs, could see them responding to my mental commands. But somehow I wasn't getting any farther from the spot where Amanda had vanished. It was like walking on a treadmill, every step carrying me nowhere. The panic hit then, primal and overwhelming. My heart rate spiked to what felt like 200 BPM, and sweat began soaking through my regulation uniform shirt despite the October chill. My vision started to tunnel, the familiar symptoms of hyperventilation making the edges of the world go gray. "Control your breathing," I told myself aloud, falling back on the wilderness first aid training that had been drilled into me. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. But even my breathing was wrong. Each inhalation seemed to take the same amount of time, require the same effort, produce the same expansion of my chest. Like I was breathing to a metronome set to some cosmic tempo I couldn't change. I fumbled for my radio with hands that no longer felt entirely like my own. Base, this is Robert, badge number 447. I have a code yellow situation at Widow's Point, requesting immediate backup. Static answered me, but not the random white noise of electronic interference. This static had patterns, rhythms, almost like speech in a language I didn't understand. Base, do you copy? I have a missing person situation and something else. Something wrong. The static continued, and beneath it, I swear I could hear voices. Distant, familiar. One of them sounded like Amanda, calling for help from somewhere impossibly far away. I checked my phone again. 3:47 p.m. Fuck. The word exploded out of me, loud enough to startle myself. I never swore on duty, but the situation was rapidly moving beyond the boundaries of normal protocol. I was Robert McKinney, 31 years old, 7 years of exemplary service, expert in wilderness navigation and search and rescue techniques. I did not believe in ghosts or time travel, or any of the supernatural bullshit that tourists sometimes claim to experience in the deep woods. But I was trapped in 3:47 p.m. on October 13th, 2018, and a woman had vanished into thin air 3 meters in front of me. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Robert's situation? Comment below. I tried a different approach, forcing my scientific training to override the primal terror. If this was some kind of temporal anomaly, and Jesus Christ, I couldn't believe I was even thinking those words, then there had to be measurable effects. Changes in the environment. Clues I could analyze. I pulled out my field notebook and began documenting everything I could observe. Temperature, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, same as when I'd arrived. Wind speed, 0, which was unusual for this elevation. Barometric pressure. I didn't have a device to measure it, but my ears felt strange, like I was changing altitude rapidly. Most importantly, the light wasn't changing. In October, in the Pacific Northwest, you could watch the sun's angle shift minute by minute as afternoon headed toward evening, but the shadows on the granite remained exactly the same length, pointing in exactly the same direction. The quality of light, that golden low-angle illumination that photographers called magic hour, remained constant. It was 3:47 p.m. forever. I tried to leave the ledge again, this time paying careful attention to what was happening. I could take steps. My legs worked normally. I could feel my feet hitting the ground, could hear the scrape of my boot treads on granite. But somehow, every step I took away from the ledge was balanced by an equal and opposite force that brought me back to the exact same position. Not physically back. I never felt myself being pulled or pushed. It was more like the landscape itself was rearranging around me, keeping me always at the center of this impossible moment. That's when I heard Amanda scream. It came from below, from the cliff face where no human being could possibly survive a fall, a cry of terror and desperation that cut through the supernatural silence like a knife. But when I rushed to the edge and looked down, there was nothing but granite and scattered pine trees 60 feet below. "Amanda, I'm coming!" I shouted into the void. Her voice came again, but this time from behind me. I spun around, nearly losing my balance, but the forest was empty. Just Douglas firs and western hemlocks, their branches swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. Then from my left, then my right. Amanda's cries for help seemed to come from every direction at once, echoing off invisible walls in a space that shouldn't have had walls. Each scream was identical in pitch, duration, and desperation, like a recording being played on repeat. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block out the sound, but it didn't help. The screams weren't coming through my ears. They were coming from inside my head, resonating in my bones, vibrating in my teeth. "This isn't real," I said aloud, my voice barely audible over Amanda's impossible cries. "This is a hallucination. Altitude sickness. Dehydration. Something rational." But even as I spoke, I knew I was lying to myself. I'd experienced altitude sickness before. I knew the symptoms of dehydration, hypothermia, heat exhaustion. This was something else entirely, something that didn't belong in my carefully cataloged understanding of how the world worked. My phone buzzed with another text. Sarah. M's soccer game is at 5, don't be late again, science boy. Same message, same timestamp. 3:47 p.m. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered, willing the numbers to change. When they didn't, I tried calling Sarah directly. The phone showed a full signal, 4 bars of LTE service, but when I hit her number, nothing happened. The screen just sat there, frozen on the calling display. I ended the call and tried again. Same result. I tried calling the ranger station 911, even the local weather service. Nothing. My phone had become a useless rectangle of glass and metal, capable of receiving the same text message over and over, but unable to send any communication to the outside world. The screaming stopped as suddenly as it had started. In the silence that followed, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the tree line behind me, the sound of hiking boots on granite, the same distinctive pattern Amanda's Merrills had made when I was tracking her. I turned around, my hand instinctively moving to the bear spray clipped to my belt. Amanda was walking toward me. Same blue Columbia jacket, same dark hiking pants, same yellow Osprey pack. But something was wrong with her movement. She walked with perfect mechanical precision, each step identical to the last. No natural variation in pace or stride length, no adjustment for the uneven terrain. Like a wind-up toy following a predetermined path. Amanda? My voice came out as a croak. Amanda, thank God. I thought, where did you go? She didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that I'd spoken. She walked past me as if I were invisible, moving toward the exact spot on the ledge where she'd been standing when she disappeared. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and my hand passed right through her. The cold was instant and absolute, like plunging my arm into liquid nitrogen. But it wasn't just cold, it was absence. The complete lack of everything that made something real. My hand emerged from the other side of her body, numb and tingling, and for a horrible moment I couldn't feel my fingers at all. Amanda reached the ledge and began taking photos just like before. She raised the Canon DSLR, adjusted the settings, framed her shots of the mineral formations. Every movement was identical to what I'd witnessed the first time. Even the way her hair moved in the non-existent wind was exactly the same. I backed away from her, my heart hammering against my ribs. This isn't happening. This is not fucking happening. But it was happening. I was watching Amanda replay the last minutes of her existence, trapped in some kind of supernatural loop that defied every law of physics I'd ever learned. And somehow, I was trapped with her. My phone buzzed again. Sarah. M's soccer game is at 5. Don't be late again, science boy. 3:47 p.m. I looked at Amanda, and she turned toward me with that same confused, slightly embarrassed expression I'd seen before. Oh God, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the thin mountain air. I lost track of time. My phone died around noon, and the samples up here are incredible. Look at this mineral stratification. Word for word, gesture for gesture. The exact same sequence of events I'd already experienced. But this time I was ready for it. Instead of looking at my phone when it buzzed, I kept my eyes locked on Amanda. I watched her every movement, cataloging each detail with the obsessive precision that had made me a good ranger. The way she adjusted her glasses when she spoke. The small scar on her left hand. The fading sticker on her camera strap that read, Marine Bio Rocks. I was determined to understand what was happening to her, to us. Amanda, listen to me carefully, I said, interrupting her excited explanation of mineral deposits. You need to step away from that ledge. Right now. But she couldn't hear me. Or maybe she could hear me, but she couldn't process what I was saying. Her mouth continued moving, forming the same words about losing track of time and her dead phone, even as I spoke directly to her. I tried to grab her arm, to physically pull her away from the spot where she would disappear, But just like before, my hand passed through her without resistance. She was there and not there, real and unreal, existing in a state that my rational mind refused to accept. The metallic smell was getting stronger, and the air around Amanda began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. The edges of her body became indistinct, blurring into the landscape behind her. No, no, I muttered, backing away from the impossible sight. Amanda, please just step away from the ledge. But even as I spoke, I knew it was useless. This wasn't Amanda, not really. This was an echo, a recording, a supernatural playback of events that had already been decided. The real Amanda was somewhere else, trapped in whatever impossible place the thing that had taken her called home. She disappeared again at exactly 3:47 p.m., leaving behind the same copper penny smell and the same profound silence. My phone buzzed. Sarah, M's soccer game is at 5. Don't be late again, science boy. The loop was starting over. I don't know how many times I lived through those same few minutes. Dozens, hundreds. Time became meaningless when it refused to move forward. I tried everything I could think of to break the cycle. I tried leaving the area before Amanda appeared, but I always found myself back on the ledge at 3:47 p.m. I tried destroying the camera, but it reformed itself like smoke condensing back into solid matter. I tried staying in physical contact with Amanda throughout the entire sequence, but my hands passed through her like she was made of fog. I tried not looking at my phone when it buzzed, but the loop continued regardless. Each repetition was identical down to the smallest detail. Amanda's words, her gestures, the angle of the light, the complete absence of wind. Even my own reactions began to feel scripted, as if I was just another part of the recording being played on infinite repeat. But gradually, I began to notice things that my panic had made me miss during the first few loops. Details that didn't belong. Inconsistencies in the perfect repetition. The mineral formations Amanda was photographing weren't quite right. I'd studied the geology of this area extensively, and the rock layers were wrong. Limestone over granite instead of the other way around. Quartz veins that ran in impossible directions. It was like someone had created a Hollywood version of a mountain landscape, convincing at first glance but wrong in ways that only an expert would notice. The plants were wrong too. Douglas firs growing at elevations where they couldn't survive. Ferns that belonged in coastal rainforests sprouting from granite cracks. Even the pine needles scattered on the ground were from species that didn't exist in Olympic National Park. Most disturbing of all, Amanda's camera was taking pictures of things that weren't there. During one loop, I managed to get close enough to see the LCD screen while she was shooting. The display showed her photographing a group of people standing behind me. When I turned around, I was alone. But the camera insisted there were figures in the frame, tall, impossibly thin silhouettes that seemed to shift and blur whenever I tried to focus on them. In one photo, I counted 7 distinct shapes. In the next, 12. Then 3. As if the camera was capturing some parallel version of reality where the empty ledge was crowded with observers. During loop number, I'd lost count, something different happened. Amanda was halfway through her usual explanation about mineral samples when she stopped mid-sentence. Her mouth kept moving, but no sound came out. She turned her head toward me with mechanical precision, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked directly at me. Her eyes were completely white. No iris, no pupil, just blank, milky spheres that seemed to glow with their own internal light. "Robert," she said, though her lips didn't move. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing inside my skull. "Robert, you need to understand." "Understand what?" I managed to gasp. "You're not trapped in time," Amanda's voice said. "Time is trapped in you." Before I could ask what the hell that meant, she was gone again, and the loop reset. 3:47 p.m. Sarah's text. Amanda walking toward the ledge. But now I had something new to think about during the endless repetitions. Time is trapped in you. What did that mean? How could time be trapped in a person? I started paying attention to my own body during the loops, monitoring every sensation and reaction. My heart rate stayed constant. My breathing never changed rhythm. Even my sweat seemed to appear and disappear in the same patterns. It was like I was a recording too, playing back the same physiological responses over and over. But there were moments, brief flashes, where I felt different, more real, more present. They always came when I was thinking about home, about Sarah's sleepy morning voice, about Emma's crayon drawing in my breast pocket, about the soccer game I was supposed to attend at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. That was it. That was the key. I pulled out my phone and stared at the timestamp on Sarah's text. M's soccer game is at 5. Don't be late again, science boy. The game started at 5 p.m. It was currently 3:47 p.m. That gave me 1 hour and 13 minutes to get off this mountain and drive to Emma's school. Under normal circumstances, it would be tight but doable. But these weren't normal circumstances. I was trapped in a supernatural time loop, and every second I spent here was a second closer to missing my daughter's game. Missing another promise I'd made to be there for my family. The entity, whatever it was that had taken Amanda, was using my own guilt against me. My history of choosing work over family, of arriving late to school plays and birthday parties because I'd gotten absorbed in some scientific puzzle in the wilderness. Science boy, Sarah called me. It was an affectionate nickname, but sometimes I caught an edge of frustration in her voice when she said it. Robert the science boy, who loved facts more than feelings, who understood GPS coordinates better than emotions. The thing that had taken Amanda knew about my daughter's soccer game. It had to. Why else would Sarah's text arrive at the exact moment Amanda disappeared? Why else would the loop trap me at 3:47 p.m., cutting it so close to 5 p.m. that every repetition was a reminder of what I was going to miss? It was feeding on my guilt, my fear of being a bad father, my terror that Sarah and Emma would eventually get tired of coming second to my obsession with understanding the natural world. But understanding that didn't help me escape it. During the next loop, I tried something different. Instead of trying to save Amanda or break the temporal prison, I focused entirely on my family. I pulled Emma's drawing from my breast pocket and studied every crayon line. I thought about Sarah's laugh, the way she snorted slightly when something really amused her. I remembered Emma's tiny hand in mine as we walked through the forests near our house, her endless questions about why trees grew toward the sun and where birds went when they died. The loop stuttered. For just a moment, Amanda's mechanical precision faltered. She stumbled slightly as she walked toward the ledge, and her voice changed pitch when she spoke about mineral samples. The artificial perfection of the recording developed a crack. That's it, I whispered. That's how I fight back. I had to remember who I was beyond this mountain, beyond this job, beyond the scientific obsession that had defined me for so long. I was Robert McKinney, husband to Sarah and father to Emma. I was a man who had promised to be at a soccer game at 5 p.m., and I had never broken a promise to my daughter. Not once, not ever. And I wasn't going to start now. During the next loop, I ignored Amanda completely. Instead, I sat down on the granite ledge and pulled out my phone. Not to check the time or read Sarah's text, but to look at my photos. Pictures of Emma learning to ride a bike, Sarah making pancakes on Sunday morning, the three of us camping in the Olympic rainforest. Emma's face lit up with wonder as she discovered a banana slug. The temperature began to drop. Not gradually, like a normal weather change, but precipitously. My breath started fogging in the suddenly frigid air, and frost began forming on the granite around me. Something was angry. Amanda's loop became more aggressive. Instead of simply walking to the ledge, she ran. Her movements were jerky, unnatural, like a marionette being controlled by an increasingly frustrated puppeteer. When she spoke about mineral samples, her voice was distorted, overlaid with harmonics that made my teeth ache. "Look at this mineral stratification," she screamed, her head rotating a full 180 degrees to stare at me with those blank white eyes. "Look at it." But I didn't look. I kept scrolling through photos of my family, anchoring myself in the reality of love that existed beyond this supernatural trap. The thing wearing Amanda's face began to change. Her features melted and reformed, cycling through different appearances. Sometimes she looked like Amanda, sometimes like other people I'd rescued over the years, sometimes like no one human at all. "You cannot leave," the thing said in a voice like grinding stone. "You are mine now. Your guilt feeds me, your failure nourishes me." My failure? I stood up, still holding my phone with Emma's photo displayed. "I haven't failed at anything. You are missing your daughter's game, again. You chose work over family, again. You are exactly the father you swore you would never be." The words hit like physical blows because they contained enough truth to hurt. I had missed games before. I had arrived late to recitals and birthdays. I had disappointed my family more times than I wanted to count, but not today. "You're wrong," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm not missing Emma's game, because I'm leaving, right fucking now." I started walking away from the ledge, and this time, I didn't let the spatial distortion bring me back. I focused on Emma's face in the photograph, on the promise I'd made to be there for her, on the love that connected me to a reality beyond this mountain. The entity wearing Amanda's face shrieked, a sound like tearing metal that made my bones vibrate. The false landscape around me began to dissolve, revealing something underneath that my mind couldn't fully process. Organic architecture that defied geometry, corridors that led in directions that didn't exist, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of someone crying for help. The real Amanda. "I'm coming back for you," I called into the dissolving nightmare. "But first I have a soccer game to attend." The world exploded into white light, and suddenly I was lying on real granite, breathing real air, feeling real wind on my face. My watch read 4:23 p.m. I had 37 minutes to get to Emma's school. I ran down that mountain like the devil himself was chasing me. I made it to the soccer game with 3 minutes to spare, arriving at the school parking lot with dirt on my uniform and panic still hammering in my chest. Emma's face lit up when she saw me in the stands, and she scored her first goal of the season 20 minutes later. After the game, as we walked to the car, Emma held my hand and chattered about her teammates and the perfect cross that had set up her goal. Sarah walked on my other side, her arm linked through mine. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said quietly, studying my face with the expression she got when she was trying to solve a problem. "Something like that," I admitted. "Everything okay?" I thought about Amanda, still trapped somewhere in that impossible space between seconds, about the entity that fed on guilt and failure and the small betrayals that eat away at families, about the promises we make and the promises we break. "Everything's okay," I said, "but I need to call in some backup. There's still someone on that mountain who needs help." 3 days later, I went back to Widow's Point with a full search and rescue team. We found Amanda's camp exactly as I'd left it, but there was no sign of the supernatural playground where I'd been trapped. Just normal granite and normal trees and normal afternoon shadows. But we did find something else. A cave system that hadn't appeared on any geological survey. Deep limestone caverns that honeycombed the mountain, filled with strange echoes and the smell of copper pennies. In the deepest chamber, we found Amanda. She was alive, barely, lying in what looked like a naturally formed granite alcove. Severe dehydration and hypothermia, but alive. When she woke up in the hospital 3 days later, she had no memory of how she'd gotten into the cave system. Her last clear recollection was taking photos on Widow's Point at 3:47 p.m. on October 13th. The doctor said it was a miracle she'd survived. The caves were a maze, and she'd somehow found her way to the one chamber with an underground spring. They couldn't explain how she'd gotten there or how she'd survived without food for 6 days. I could have explained it, but who would have believed me? Amanda recovered fully and finished her marine biology degree the following spring. She still comes to visit the park sometimes, always bringing her camera, always interested in the geological formations. But she never goes to Widow's Point anymore. Some part of her remembers, even if her conscious mind has blocked it out. I still work as a ranger at Olympic National Park. I still carry waterproof notebooks and memorize GPS coordinates and explain strange noises with scientific facts. But I've never missed another one of Emma's games. I've never been late to another school play or birthday party, because I know what's waiting for parents who break their promises. I know there's something out there that feeds on guilt and failure, something that can trap you in your worst moment and make you live it forever. Time isn't linear. It's not even circular. Sometimes it's a prison designed specifically for you, built from your own regrets and lined with the echoes of the choices you wish you could unmake. But love, real love, the kind that shows up and keeps promises and chooses family over everything else, that's stronger than time. That's what broke the loop and brought me home. That's what saved Amanda's life, even though she'll never know it. And that's what keeps me anchored in the real world, where 3:47 p.m. comes and goes and never traps me again. My name is Robert McKinney, and I learned that some prisons can only be escaped by becoming the person you always meant to be. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Amanda. I read every single one. My name is Andrew, and I saw Nicole pela última vez 3 metros à minha frente na trilha antes de simplesmente desaparecer. I've been a ranger at Yellowstone for 15 years. I've pulled bodies from ravines, tracked down lost hikers in blizzards, and faced down charging grizzlies without flinching. Nothing in these mountains scared me anymore. Until October 13th, 2018. Nicole Martinez was 23, visiting from Phoenix with her college roommates. Bright smile, hiking boots still box fresh, the kind of tourist who takes selfies with every wildflower. Her group had permits for the Fairy Falls Trail, but Nicole wanted to see the real wilderness, asked me personally to show her a backcountry route during my afternoon patrol. Against protocol, I said yes. Something about her enthusiasm reminded me of my daughter Emma, away at college herself. We were 3 miles up the Sentinel Creek Trail when it happened. Nicole was chattering about her environmental science major, pointing out elk sign I'd shown her. The afternoon sun filtered through the aspens, turning their October gold into liquid light. Perfect hiking weather. Crisp 45 degrees, slight breeze carrying the scent of pine and decomposing leaves. I was checking my GPS, one of those early Garmin units, brick heavy in my pack, when Nicole's voice just stopped. I looked up. Empty trail ahead. "Nicole?" I called, my voice echoing off the canyon walls. My heart rate jumped from 70 to 120 in seconds, the kind of adrenaline spike that happens when your brain screams wrong. No footprints off the trail, no disturbed vegetation, no bear sign, no cliff edges nearby. The trail was straight for 50 yards ahead, nowhere to hide. But Nicole was gone. I radioed base immediately. "Station, this is Ranger 47. I have a missing hiker. Immediate search and rescue needed at grid reference." My voice stayed steady, professional. 15 years of training kicked in even as my mind reeled. The search lasted 18 hours. Dogs found her scent, ending abruptly at the same spot where I'd lost her. No trace beyond that point, like she'd simply ceased to exist. The FBI brought in their behavioral analysis unit. Local news ran the story for weeks. Nicole's parents flew in from Arizona, her mother collapsing in the station parking lot. I gave my statement 47 times. Each time the investigators' expressions grew more skeptical. People don't just vanish in broad daylight, especially not when they're being escorted by an experienced ranger. The official report blamed probable wildlife encounter with body carried off by scavengers. Case closed. I knew better. I'd seen every kind of animal attack in these mountains. This was something else. 3 weeks later, I was back on patrol. Mandatory psychological evaluation said I was fit for duty, though I'd lost 12 pounds and wasn't sleeping. My wife Sarah kept asking if I wanted to transfer stations. I couldn't explain that leaving felt like abandoning Nicole. I was checking the same trail. Sentinel Creek had become my obsession when I heard it. Andrew, help me." Nicole's voice, clear as mountain air, coming from the dense forest north of the trail. My blood turned to ice water. I knew that voice like my own daughter's. The slight southwestern accent, the way she pronounced my name with emphasis on the first syllable. But Nicole was gone. Dead. Had to be. "Please, Andrew, I'm hurt." The voice came again, maybe 100 yards into the trees. My rational mind screamed warnings, but my legs were already moving. 15 years of search and rescue training overrode everything else. Someone was calling for help. I pushed through the undergrowth, branches catching on my uniform shirt. The forest grew darker, the canopy thick enough to block most afternoon sunlight. My boots crunched through layers of fallen leaves, aspen gold, oak brown, the occasional maple red. "Andrew, over here." Closer now, maybe 50 yards ahead. I could hear desperation in Nicole's voice, the kind of raw fear that cuts straight through your chest. My hand moved instinctively to my radio. "Base, this is Ranger 47. I'm following a distress call approximately 1 mile north of Sentinel Creek Trail, requesting backup to my location." Static. Dead air. I checked the radio display. Full bars, battery at 80%. The unit was functioning perfectly, but no response from base. Sometimes the canyon walls blocked transmission, but not usually this close to the main trail. "Andrew, hurry, please." The voice was moving, leading me deeper into the forest. I followed for 20 minutes, crashing through deadfall and scrub brush. My uniform was torn in 3 places, and I'd scraped my left hand bloody on a fallen pine. But I was gaining ground. Nicole's voice was definitely closer. Then I realized something was wrong. Nicole had been calling for help for 20 minutes straight, not pausing to breathe, not varying her words. Just, "Andrew, help me, and please, Andrew," over and over, like a recording on loop. I stopped walking. The forest around me was completely silent. No bird calls, no insect noise, no wind through the leaves. Even my own breathing seemed muffled, as if the air itself had thickened. "Andrew, this way!" The voice came from directly ahead, maybe 30 feet, but I still couldn't see her. "Nicole, where are you? I can hear you, but I can't see you." Silence. For the first time in 20 minutes, complete silence. Then, from behind me, "Andrew, why did you leave me?" I spun around, hand moving to my service weapon. The voice was identical, same accent, same tone, same desperation. But now it was coming from the direction I just traveled. "I'm scared, Andrew. Why won't you help me?" 2 voices now. One ahead, one behind. Both perfectly matching Nicole's speech patterns, but speaking in unison like some nightmarish chorus. My mouth went dry. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my saliva. This wasn't possible. Nicole was dead. I'd seen the search reports, the forensic analysis. People don't just... "Andrew!" The voice came from directly above me. I looked up into the canopy, my hand shaking as I drew my flashlight. The LED beam cut through the gathering darkness, illuminating branches 30 feet overhead. There was something hanging from the trees. Not Nicole. Something else. Shapes that might have been human once, wrapped in what looked like organic webbing or cocoon material. They hung perfectly still, suspended from the stronger branches like grotesque fruit, and they were all calling my name. "Andrew!" came from the shape on the left. "Help us, Andrew!" from the center. "Please don't leave us!" from the right. All in Nicole's voice. All perfectly synchronized. I stumbled backward, my boots catching on exposed roots. The flashlight beam swayed wildly, casting moving shadows that seemed to reach for me. There had to be a dozen of those things hanging up there, maybe more. Some looked fresh. Others appeared to have been there for months, maybe years. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Andrew's situation? Comment below. That's when I saw her. Nicole, the real Nicole, wrapped in the same organic material as the others, suspended 20 feet above my head. Her eyes were open, staring down at me with an expression of absolute terror. Her mouth was moving, forming words, but no sound was coming out. The cocoon material pulsed around her like a heartbeat. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" The voice came from directly behind me. Not Nicole's voice this time. Something else. Something that sounded like wind through dry leaves, like the whisper of decay. I spun around, drawing my sidearm. Nothing there but darkness between the trees. "I've been saving her for you, Andrew. She told me so much about you before I silenced her vocal cords. Such a kind man," she said. "So protective. So predictable." The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. The trees, the ground, the air itself. "You see, I collect voices. Human voices. Each one unique, like a fingerprint. I learn them, practice them, perfect them, and then I use them to collect more." A shape detached itself from the shadows 30 feet away. At first glance, it looked human, tall, wearing what might have been hiking clothes. But as it moved closer, I could see the wrongness in its proportions. Arms too long, joints bending in directions that made my eyes water. Nicole's voice was particularly beautiful. Such range, such emotion. I've been practicing with it for weeks, calling to the other rangers. But they're all so cautious, so careful. Not like you, Andrew. You came running the moment you heard her call. My service weapon felt useless in my shaking hands. This thing, whatever it was, had been using Nicole's voice to hunt. How many other missing hikers had followed that familiar call into the trees? The others will come looking for you, of course, your fellow rangers. Your lovely wife, Sarah. Yes, Nicole told me all about your family before I harvested her voice. Perhaps I'll use yours to call them. Such a trustworthy voice you have, Andrew. So authoritative. So fatherly. The creature was close enough now that I could see its face, or what had once been a face. Features shifted and flowed like melting wax, cycling through different human appearances. For a moment, it looked exactly like Nicole, then like my wife, then like my daughter, Emma. "Don't worry," it whispered in Nicole's voice. "The process is quite painless. I'll take excellent care of your vocal cords. They'll serve me well for decades to come." I raised my weapon, but my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't aim. 15 years of ranger training and I was falling apart like a rookie on his first day. Then I heard it, faint but unmistakable. My radio crackling to life. "Ranger 47, this is base. We've lost your signal. Please respond with your location." The creature's head snapped toward the sound, its fluid features solidifying into an expression of annoyance. "No," it hissed, its voice cycling rapidly through different stolen tones. "Not yet. I'm not finished with you yet." But something had changed. The oppressive silence of the forest was breaking up. I could hear wind in the leaves again, the distant call of a hawk. Whatever supernatural influence this thing had over the area was weakening. I thought of Sarah, waiting for me at home. Of Emma, calling every Sunday from college. Of Nicole, still alive but trapped in that nightmare cocoon above my head. The fear didn't leave. If anything, it intensified. But alongside it came something else. Anger. White-hot rage at this thing that had taken an innocent girl and used her voice to hunt others. I steadied my weapon with both hands and fired 3 shots center mass. The bullets passed right through the creature without effect, but my gunfire echoed through the forest like thunder. And in that sound I heard something else, the distant noise of helicopter rotors. Search and rescue. They'd found me. The creature heard it too, its face contorted with fury, features shifting rapidly between dozens of different stolen identities. "This isn't over, Andrew," it snarled in Nicole's voice. "I know where you live. I know your family's voices. I'll come for them next." But even as it spoke, the thing was fading, becoming translucent. The helicopter noise grew louder, and with it came the beam of a searchlight cutting through the canopy above. "Ranger 47, we have you on thermal. Stay where you are." I looked up at Nicole's cocoon one last time. Her eyes were still open, still aware, still alive. "I'm coming back for you," I shouted to her. "I promise." The creature was gone. The forest had returned to normal. Normal sounds, normal shadows, normal air that didn't taste like fear and desperation. but the cocooned body still hung from the trees like obscene fruit. When the rescue team rappelled down from the helicopter, they found me standing guard under 23 suspended cocoons. 23 missing hikers from the past 5 years, all kept alive by whatever alien biology that thing used to preserve its victims. Nicole was the newest. She'd been conscious the entire time, aware but unable to speak or move. The others had been there much longer, some for years. All of them had been bait, their voices stolen and used to lure more victims. The medical team managed to extract 17 of them alive. 6 had been there too long. Their bodies had begun integrating with the cocoon material. Nicole survived, though she spent 2 months in intensive care and still can't speak above a whisper. I never returned to active duty. The psychological evaluations were conclusive: PTSD, severe anxiety, persistent nightmares. They offered me a desk job, but I couldn't handle being in the forest anymore. Every rustling leaf sounded like that thing's voice. But sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I hear Nicole calling my name from the darkness outside my bedroom window. It's still out there, still hunting, still using the voices of people I failed to save. And someday soon, I know it's going to come for my family. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind like if you want more terrifying Ranger stories? Follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Nicole. I read every single one. My name is Matthew, and I saw Ava for the last time 3 meters ahead of me on the trail before she simply disappeared. It was October 15th, 2018, 2:47 p.m. according to my Garmin GPS, when everything I thought I knew about reality shattered like glass against granite. The afternoon sun filtered through the amber canopy of Shenandoah National Park, casting those long October shadows that always made me uneasy. But it wasn't the shadows that should have worried me. It was the voices. I'd been dealing with my own demons for 3 years now. Ever since the incident at Glacier Point when I followed what I swore was my 8-year-old daughter Emma's voice, screaming for help in the wilderness, only to find empty air and pine needles. Emma had been safe at home 200 miles away, sleeping in her bed, but I heard her. Christ, I still hear her sometimes in my dreams, that terrified little voice calling, "Daddy, please help me." That's why they assigned me to desk duty for 6 months. That's why Sarah still looks at me with those worried eyes when I pack my gear. That's why I should have known better when I heard Emma's voice again that day, just as Ava Martinez vanished into thin air. Ava was 19, a junior at Virginia Tech studying environmental science. Blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing a red Columbia jacket that her mother had bought her specifically so she'd be visible on hiking trails. She'd been documenting the autumn migration patterns of songbirds for her thesis, carrying a digital recorder and a notebook filled with meticulous observations written in purple ink. Her mother, Carmen, had called me directly that morning, bypassing the usual protocols. "Please, Ranger Thompson," she'd said, her accent thick with tears. "Ava always checks in every 2 hours when she's in the field. It's been 6 hours. Something's wrong. I can feel it in my bones." I'd found Ava around noon on the White Oak Canyon Trail, setting up her equipment near the waterfall. She was exactly where she'd told her mother she'd be, exactly where her GPS tracker showed her last location. We'd talked for maybe 10 minutes about her project, about the unusual silence of the birds this season. She was excited, passionate about her work, the kind of kid who still believed she could save the world one species at a time. "I'm heading to Survey Site 3, she'd told me, pointing to a spot on her trail map marked with a neat purple circle. "Should take about an hour." I'd watched her walk ahead of me on the narrow trail, her red jacket bright against the gray tree trunks. The forest was unusually quiet. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. My radio crackled with static, the digital display showing full signal strength but somehow feeling disconnected from the outside world. That's when I heard it. "Daddy?" Emma's voice, coming from somewhere behind me and to the left. Small, frightened, exactly like it had been 3 years ago. My blood turned to ice water. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my radio. I spun around, knowing it couldn't be real. Emma was in school. Emma was safe. Emma was 200 miles away eating cafeteria pizza and complaining about fractions. But the voice came again. "Daddy, I'm scared. Please come find me." For maybe 5 seconds, I stood frozen between reality and nightmare. The rational part of my brain, the part trained in search and rescue protocols, the part that knew my daughter's school schedule by heart, was screaming that this was impossible. But the father in me, the part that still woke up in cold sweats from dreams of failing to save my child, took a step toward the voice. Just one step. When I turned back to the trail, Ava was gone. Not walked around a bend, gone. Not stepped behind a tree, gone. Simply absent. Like she'd been edited out of reality with a cosmic delete key. Her footprints in the soft earth ended abruptly 3 meters ahead of where I'd last seen her, as if she'd been lifted straight up into the sky. "Ava," I called, my voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Ava." Nothing. I keyed my radio. "Base, this is Unit 47. I have a possible missing hiker on White Oak Canyon Trail. Coordinates 385943, 783520. Request immediate backup." Static answered me. Just static. I checked my phone. No signal, even though I'd had full bars 10 minutes earlier. The GPS was working, showing my exact location, but somehow I felt more lost than I ever had in 20 years of ranger service. The forest around me had changed. The air tasted different, metallic, wrong, like the moment before lightning strikes. The temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees and my breath was visible in small puffs. But it was 73 degrees according to my weather radio. Nothing was making sense. I followed Ava's trail to where it simply ended, knelt down and examined the earth with my magnifying glass. Her boot treads, size 7. Merrell hiking boots with that distinctive chevron pattern were clear in the soft soil. Each step normal, purposeful, heading north along the designated trail. Until they weren't. The last print was her left foot, a full impression about 8 inches deep, showing she'd been walking at normal speed, carrying her full pack weight. But there should have been a right footprint 18 to 24 inches ahead. Instead, there was undisturbed earth covered with this morning's frost. I stood up slowly, my knees creaking like old floorboards. That's when I noticed the birds, or rather the absence of them. Shenandoah in October should be alive with migrating warblers, woodpeckers, nuthatches. I should have been hearing calls, wing beats, the rustle of small bodies moving through the underbrush. Instead, the forest was silent as a tomb. No, wait, not completely silent. There was something, a sound so faint I almost missed it. Whispering. Matthew. My name spoken in Ava's voice coming from somewhere ahead on the trail. But not quite her voice. It had the right tone, the right inflection she'd used when talking about her research, but underneath it was something else. Something that made my teeth ache. "Matthew, I'm here. I need your help." Every instinct I'd developed in 2 decades of wilderness work was screaming at me to turn around, call for backup, wait for the cavalry. But my radio was dead, my phone was useless, and somewhere in this silent forest a 19-year-old girl was calling my name. I started walking toward the voice. The trail ahead should have been familiar. I'd hiked this section hundreds of times. But the landmarks were wrong. The old lightning-struck oak that should have been on my right was gone. The wooden bridge over Broken Back Run was in the wrong place, about 50 yards south of where it belonged. "Matthew, please hurry." Ava's voice again, but now it was coming from behind me. I spun around. The trail I just walked looked different too. The slope was steeper, the trees thicker, and there, maybe 30 yards back, I could see a flash of red fabric moving between the trunks. "Ava," I called out. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you." I started jogging back down the trail, my pack bouncing against my spine, my boots slipping on wet leaves. But the red jacket was always just out of sight, always moving away from me. And then I heard another voice. "Matt, baby, where are you?" Sarah. My wife's voice, thick with worry and love and that particular tone she uses when she's trying not to cry. She was supposed to be at work. She was supposed to be teaching second graders about the water cycle and helping little Brandon Phillips with his reading problems. Matt, I need you to come home. Something's wrong with Emma. My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. I stopped running, stopped breathing, stopped thinking about anything except the possibility that something had happened to my daughter while I was out here chasing ghosts in the woods. What's wrong? I called back. Sarah, what's wrong with Emma? She's asking for you. She's scared, Matt. She keeps saying she can hear you calling her name in the forest. Please come home. The rational part of my brain was still functioning, barely. Sarah couldn't be here. Sarah didn't even know I was on this specific trail. Sarah would have called my radio or my cell phone, not wandered into the middle of Shenandoah National Park to find me. But the voice was perfect. The slight hoarseness she gets when she's been crying. The way she shortens my name when she's really worried. The little catch in her breath when she mentions Emma. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Matthew's situation? Comment below. I'm coming, I heard myself say, and I started walking towards Sarah's voice. But as I walked, Ava's voice came from a different direction. Matthew, don't leave me, I'm hurt. I think my leg is broken. And then Emma's voice, my little girl's voice, scared and small. Daddy, why won't you come find me? I've been calling and calling. 3 voices, 3 people I cared about, 3 impossible situations. And then I understood. This wasn't about finding Ava. This was about the thing that had taken her. The thing that could sound like anyone, mimic anyone, use love and fear and guilt as weapons more effective than any trap. I'd read about it in the old Ranger reports, the ones from the 1970s that officially didn't exist. Local legends about something in the deep woods that could steal voices, use them to lure people away from safety. The Cherokee had warned against it when this land was first designated as parkland. They called it the one who borrows breath. But I'd always thought those were just stories, campfire tales to keep hikers on marked trails. Now, surrounded by the voices of everyone I loved, all calling me in different directions, I realized those stories were warnings. My radio crackled to life. Matthew, this is Base. Please respond with your location. Jim's voice. My supervisor, my friend, the man who'd stood by me during my breakdown 3 years ago. Normal, professional, exactly what I needed to hear. I reached for my radio with shaking hands. Base, this is Unit 47. I'm on White Oak Canyon Trail with a missing hiker situation. I need immediate backup. Matthew, we show you as off-grid. Your GPS beacon went dark 20 minutes ago. Are you injured? I'm not sure where I am, Base. Something's wrong with the trail markers, nothing looks right. Matthew, we're dispatching a search team to your last known location. But I need you to stay calm and stay put. Do not follow any voices you hear. Do you understand me? The relief that flooded through me was like drinking hot coffee after hours in the cold. Jim knew. Somehow Jim knew what was happening. Copy that, Base. I'll hold position. And Matthew, your wife called. Emma's fine. She's at school. Whatever you're hearing out there, it's not real. I closed my eyes and let that sink in. Emma was safe. Sarah was at work. The voices were lies. But then Ava's voice came again. And this time it was different. This time it was real. Help me. Please, somebody help me. The voice was weak, muffled, like she was speaking through cotton or from very far away. But it didn't have that wrong undercurrent the other voices had carried. This was genuine fear, genuine pain. Ava, where are you? I can't see anything, it's dark. I think I'm underground. I started moving toward the voice, but carefully now, testing each step, watching for signs of disturbed earth or hidden openings. Keep talking, Ava. I'm coming to find you. I was walking on the trail and I heard my mom calling. But it wasn't really her, was it? It was this thing, this creature. I followed the voice and the ground just opened up. I fell through into some kind of tunnel. I was scanning the ground now, looking for anything that might be a concealed entrance. And there, about 10 yards off the main trail, I saw it. A depression in the earth covered with fallen branches, deliberately camouflaged. I think I found where you went in. Are you hurt? My ankle's twisted, but I can walk. Matthew, there are others down here. I can hear them. Some of them have been here a long time. My blood ran cold. Others. How many people had this thing taken over the years? How many hikers, campers, hunters had followed familiar voices into this nightmare? I knelt down and started clearing away the branches. Underneath was a hole in the earth, roughly circular, about 4 feet across. It looked natural, like a sinkhole, but the edges were too smooth, too deliberately shaped. Ava, I'm going to throw down a rope. Do you think you can climb out? I can try. But Matthew, there's something else down here. Something moving in the tunnels. I don't think it wants us to leave. I tied my climbing rope to the nearest sturdy tree and dropped the other end into the hole. It disappeared into darkness after about 20 feet. The rope's coming down. Can you see it? Yes, I've got it. I'm going to try to climb up. I could hear scraping sounds, small grunts of effort. The rope went taut in my hands, and then Emma's voice came from directly behind me. Daddy, don't go down there. It's not safe. I turned around and my heart nearly stopped. Standing 10 feet away, clearly visible in the afternoon sunlight, was my daughter. Not a glimpse between trees, not a shadow or suggestion, but Emma herself. 8 years old, wearing the pink princess dress she'd outgrown 2 years ago. Her hair in the pigtails I'd braided the morning she'd started 2nd grade. Emma? She smiled at me, that gap-toothed grin that could melt my heart from across a crowded room. Hi, Daddy. I missed you. Every cell in my body was screaming that this was wrong, impossible, supernatural. But she looked so real, so perfectly, heartbreakingly real. You're not Emma, I said, but my voice was weak, uncertain. Don't be silly, Daddy. Of course I'm Emma. I came to find you because you sounded so sad when you called my name. Don't you want to give me a hug? The rope in my hands jerked. Ava was still trying to climb out, still trapped underground with whatever other victims this thing had collected over the years. But Emma was holding out her arms to me, and the longing to hold my daughter was so powerful it made my chest ache. Please, Daddy, just one hug. Then you can help your friend. I took a step toward her, and that's when I noticed her feet weren't touching the ground. You're not my daughter, I said, and this time my voice was steady. My daughter is 11 years old. She hates princess dresses, and she's in school right now learning about fractions and complaining about cafeteria pizza. The thing wearing Emma's face tilted its head, and for just a moment, something else looked out through her eyes. Something old and hungry and utterly inhuman. But I could be her, it said, and now its voice was layered, harmonized, like a dozen people speaking in unison. I could be anyone you want, anyone you've ever lost, anyone you've ever missed. The rope jerked again, more urgently this time. Matthew! Ava's real voice, strained with effort. Something's coming up the tunnel. I can hear it getting closer. I had to choose. The thing that looked like my daughter, offering me everything I'd wanted for 3 years. A chance to undo my failure, to save the child I'd failed to protect in my nightmares. Or the real person, the living girl who needed my help right now. I turned away from the Emma thing and grabbed the rope with both hands. I'm pulling you up, I called down the hole. Hold on tight. Hand over hand, I hauled Ava toward the surface. She weighed maybe 120 pounds, but it felt like lifting a truck. My shoulders burned, my back screamed, but I kept pulling. Behind me, Emma's voice became a chorus of voices. Sarah begging me to come home. Jim ordering me to abandon my post. My father, who died when I was 15, telling me I was a disappointment. And underneath all of them, something else. A sound like wind through dead leaves, like the whisper of old bones. Ava's head appeared at the mouth of the hole, her face pale and streaked with dirt. I grabbed her arms and hauled her up onto solid ground. Thank God, she gasped. I thought I was going to die down there. The hole behind us was making sounds now, scraping, scratching, like something large dragging itself through narrow tunnels. We need to move, I said. Right now. But when I turned around, we were surrounded. A dozen figures stood in a circle around us. People I recognized from missing person reports over the years. Hikers who'd vanished without a trace. Campers whose tents were found empty, their occupants never seen again. But they were wrong, all of them. Their skin had a waxy, artificial look, like department store mannequins. Their eyes were all the same color, a pale milky blue that seemed to glow in the shadows. And when they moved in perfect synchronization, like puppets controlled by the same set of strings. "You cannot leave," they said in unison, their voices a harmony of the dead. "No one leaves. We have been waiting so long for new voices to add to our collection." Ava grabbed my arm. "What are they?" "Copies," I said. "Echoes. The thing down there. It doesn't just mimic voices. It keeps the people it takes, uses them like a library." The Emma thing stepped forward from the group. "We only want to love you, Daddy. We only want to keep you safe. Safe with us, forever and ever." It held out its hand, and for a moment I was tempted. How easy would it be to just give up? To let this thing take me, add my voice to its collection? I could be with Emma, or at least something that looked like Emma, forever. But then I looked at Ava. Real, living, breathing Ava, with dirt under her fingernails and fear in her eyes and a future full of discoveries waiting for her back in the real world. "Run," I told her. "What about you?" I said run. Ava took off through the trees, her twisted ankle making her gait uneven but determined. The puppet people started to follow her, but I stepped into their path. "You want new voices?" I said. "Take mine. Leave her alone." The Emma thing smiled. "Oh, Daddy, we're going to take you both, but thank you for making it so easy." That's when I heard it. Real voices coming from the direction of the trail. Jim's voice calling my name. Other rangers spreading out in a search pattern. "Matthew, sound off." I pulled my emergency whistle from my pack and blew 3 sharp blasts. The international signal for distress. The puppet people flinched at the sound, their synchronized movements becoming erratic. "Here," I shouted. "I'm here, and I have the missing hiker." The sound of boots crashing through underbrush getting closer. Radio chatter, professional and efficient and beautifully, perfectly real. The Emma thing's face began to change, its features blurring and shifting like melting wax. "This isn't over, Matthew. We know your voice now. We know your love. We'll call to you again." And then they were gone. All of them, simply fading away like morning mist. Jim appeared through the trees, followed by 3 other rangers I'd known for years. Real faces, real voices, real concern in their eyes. "Jesus, Matt, what happened? We lost your signal for over an hour." I looked back at where the hole had been. There was nothing there now but solid earth and fallen leaves. "Gas leak," I said automatically. "Hallucinations. Natural geological event." Ava fell into a sinkhole that collapsed after I pulled her out. It was the explanation we'd use in the official report. The explanation that would satisfy the bureaucrats and the insurance companies and everyone who needed reality to make sense. But Jim looked into my eyes and I saw that he knew. He'd been a ranger here for 30 years. He'd read the old reports, heard the legends. "Gas leak," he repeated. "Copy that." 3 weeks later, I submitted my resignation from the National Park Service. Sarah was relieved. Emma, my real Emma, 11 years old and full of attitude, complained that I'd be around too much. But sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I hear voices calling my name from the darkness outside our windows. Familiar voices, loved voices, voices that promise comfort and peace and an end to all the guilt and fear. I've learned not to answer, because I know now that some echoes never really die. They just wait in the spaces between what's real and what we desperately want to be real. Patient as stones, hungry as winter. And somewhere in the tunnels beneath Shenandoah, something is still collecting voices, still learning new ways to call us home. Ava finished her thesis. She graduated magna cum laude and got into graduate school at Cornell. She sends me a Christmas card every year, And she never asks about what really happened that day in the forest. Some stories are better left unfinished. Some voices are better left unanswered. But I still wake up sometimes, heart pounding, because I've heard Emma calling my name from the forest. The wrong Emma, the hungry Emma, the Emma that wants to add my voice to its collection. And the worst part is, sometimes I want to answer, "Holy hell, that was intense." Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to all those missing people. I read every single one. The end. Stay out of the deep woods and never ever follow a familiar voice into the darkness. My name is Matthew, and I should have trusted my instincts when Jessica Miller stepped off the marked trail that October morning in 2018. I'd been a ranger at Blackwood National Forest for 8 years, long enough to know when something felt wrong in these ancient woods, but not long enough to understand that some wrongness runs deeper than nature intended. It was 9:47 a.m. when I first spotted Jessica near Widow's Creek, her bright red hiking jacket a splash of color against the golden autumn backdrop. She was alone, which immediately raised my concern. Solo hikers always made me nervous, especially young women. At 23, Jessica reminded me of my own daughter Emma, who'd just started college. That paternal instinct kicked in immediately, the same protective urge that made me call Emma every other day to make sure she was eating properly and staying safe. I'd kissed my wife Sarah goodbye at 6:15 that morning, promising I'd be home by 5:30 for Tommy's soccer practice. "Don't let work consume you again," she'd whispered against my lips, her coffee-scented breath warm on my face. "The kids need their dad." I'd squeezed her hand, feeling the familiar weight of my wedding ring, and assured her this would be a routine patrol. Just another peaceful day in the forest I'd grown to love and protect. But Jessica was moving with purpose toward the old mining section, an area we'd marked as unstable years ago. I called out to her, my voice echoing through the pine-scented air, but she didn't respond. The morning mist clung to the forest floor like ghostly fingers, and something about the quality of light filtering through the canopy made my skin crawl. Even the usual forest sounds, bird calls, rustling leaves, distant water, seemed muted, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. I quickened my pace, my regulation boots crunching through the carpet of fallen leaves. The smell of decay and earth was stronger here, mixed with something else I couldn't identify, something metallic and cold that made my sinuses burn. My radio crackled with static as I tried to report my position, but the transmission kept breaking up. "Base, this is Ranger Walsh. I'm following a hiker near Grid Sector 7G. I spoke into the device, but only white noise answered back. Jessica moved like she was being pulled forward by invisible strings, her gait unnaturally smooth despite the rough terrain. When I got within 30 feet of her, she stopped abruptly and turned to face me. Her eyes were completely black, not the natural brown I'd glimpsed earlier, but a deep, endless black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. My heart began hammering against my ribs so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. "Jessica?" I called, my voice coming out hoarse and uncertain. She tilted her head at an impossible angle, too far to the right, like a bird studying prey. Then she smiled, and that smile was wrong in every conceivable way. Too wide, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. The metallic taste of fear flooded my mouth as my hand instinctively moved to the emergency beacon on my belt. That's when my phone rang. The sound was jarring in the supernatural silence. My ringtone, Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, the song Sarah and I danced to at our wedding, cutting through the oppressive quiet. I fumbled for the device with shaking hands, never taking my eyes off the thing that looked like Jessica. The caller ID showed Sarah's name and her beautiful smiling face from our anniversary dinner last month. "Matthew?" Sarah's voice was pure panic, crackling through the weak signal. "Thank God you answered. The kids are missing. Emma called from college. She's driving home right now. Tommy never made it to school. I can't find them anywhere. And there are these people at our house who look exactly like us, but they're not us, Matthew. They're not us." The world tilted sideways. I looked at my phone, then at the Jessica thing. which was now grinning so wide its face seemed to be splitting apart. "Sarah, what do you mean people who look like they have our faces, our voices, everything? But their eyes. Matthew, their eyes are empty, dead. And they keep asking where you are, when you're coming home. Please, you have to help us. We're hiding in the Johnsons' basement, but I think they're getting closer. I can hear footsteps above us that sound like mine and Tommy's, but we're right here with me." The Jessica thing took a step closer, and I could see now that it cast no shadow despite the bright morning sun. Its face was flickering, like a badly tuned television, occasionally revealing glimpses of something else underneath. Something with too many teeth and skin like wet leather. My rational mind, trained by years of search and rescue protocol, tried to process what was happening. But every instinct I'd developed as a father and husband was screaming danger. "I'm coming home right now," I said into the phone, backing away from the creature. "Stay where you are, keep the kids safe, But the line went dead. The Jessica thing laughed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with a child's giggle. When it spoke, its voice was perfectly Sarah's. "Matthew, honey, where are you? Tommy's game starts in 20 minutes. You promised you wouldn't miss another one." The words came from Jessica's mouth, but they were in my wife's exact tone, with her slight southern accent and the way she pronounced my name with extra emphasis on the first syllable. I ran. My years of conditioning kicked in as I crashed through the underbrush, my breath coming in sharp bursts that sent white puffs into the cold air. Behind me, I could hear multiple voices calling. Sarah's voice, Tommy's high excited shout of "Dad, Dad, wait up," Emma's college-aged laugh. But I knew with bone-deep certainty that my family was 40 miles away in town, hopefully safe in the Johnsons' basement. My radio suddenly burst to life with perfect clarity. "Ranger Walsh, this is base. We've got reports of missing hikers in your sector. Where's your location?" But the voice coming through the speaker was Tommy's, my 8-year-old son, somehow speaking in official Ranger protocol with the vocabulary of a trained professional. I ripped the radio from my belt and hurled it into the trees. The voices behind me were getting closer, and now they were overlapping, creating a chorus of my family calling my name in increasingly desperate tones. "Matthew, please. Daddy, I'm scared. Honey, come back." But underneath each familiar voice was something else. A subtle wrongness, like a recording played at slightly the wrong speed. I reached for my emergency GPS unit, a reliable Garmin E-Trex that had never failed me in 8 years of service. The screen showed my location as constantly shifting, jumping between coordinates that would place me in 3 different states simultaneously. The compass spun wildly, unable to find magnetic north. Even my basic survival training was useless against whatever force was warping reality around me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Matthew, we made it to the police station. They don't believe us about the copies, but we're safe. Where are you? Please come home, the kids need you." 30 seconds later, another text from Sarah. "The copies found us. We're running. Meet us at the old cabin by Miller's Pond. Hurry." Then another. "Why aren't you answering? We're at Blackwood Forest looking for you. The police said you never checked in today." And another. "Matthew, I'm getting scared. These texts aren't from me. Someone else is using my phone. Don't trust anything. Don't come home." My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the device. Each message showed Sarah's contact information, her photo, everything exactly as it should be. But they couldn't all be real. The timestamp showed them arriving seconds apart, which was impossible if she was running or hiding. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Matthew's situation? Comment below. The forest around me had changed. The familiar trails I'd walked thousands of times now led in directions that defied geography. Trees I'd marked years ago with trailblazes appeared and disappeared like mirages. The sun seemed to be moving too fast across the sky, casting shadows that fell upward instead of down. And through it all, the voices of my family echoed from every direction, each one perfectly authentic and completely impossible. I found myself in a clearing I'd never seen before, despite knowing every inch of this forest. In the center stood a perfect replica of my house. Same blue siding, Same white shutters, same basketball hoop Tommy had begged me to install last summer. Warm yellow light glowed from the windows and I could see silhouettes moving inside. Normal, familiar silhouettes doing normal, familiar things. The front door opened, and Sarah stepped out wearing the pink sweater I'd bought her for Christmas. "Matthew!" she called, relief flooding her voice. "Thank God you're here. The kids are inside making hot chocolate. Tommy's been worried sick about you." Every fiber of my being wanted to run to her, to hold her close and smell her lavender shampoo and feel the realness of her heartbeat against my chest. But I remembered the phone calls, the impossible texts, the Jessica thing with its black eyes and wrong smile. This Sarah looked perfect. Too perfect. Her hair was exactly as it had been when I left that morning, not a strand out of place despite the panic she'd described. Her makeup was flawless, her clothes unwrinkled. "How did you get here?" I called back, staying at the edge of the clearing. "How did you find me?" "We followed your truck," she said, pointing to my Forest Service vehicle parked in our driveway, a driveway that shouldn't exist 40 miles from our actual home. "When you didn't come back, we got worried. You know how Tommy gets when you're late." Through the window, I could see Tommy setting the kitchen table, his movements mechanical and precise. He was wearing his Pokémon shirt, the one that had been in the laundry when I left that morning. Emma appeared beside him, her long brown hair in the same braid she'd worn to leave for college 2 months ago, despite the photos she'd been sending us of her new shorter cut. My real family had never been to this forest. Sarah was afraid of hiking and Tommy was allergic to bee stings. I never brought them here for safety reasons, but the scene before me was so perfectly domestic, so achingly normal, that part of my mind began to rationalize. Maybe I was having a breakdown. Maybe the stress of the job had finally cracked something inside my brain. Maybe I was the one who was wrong, not them. "Come inside, honey," Sarah said, and her voice carried all the warmth and love of 17 years of marriage. "You look exhausted. When's the last time you ate something?" I took a step forward, then stopped. "What did you pack in my lunch this morning?" She paused for just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable unless you'd been married to someone long enough to know their every expression. "Turkey sandwich," she said, "with that honey mustard you like." But she'd run out of honey mustard 3 days ago. I'd eaten a plain ham sandwich that morning, and we'd laughed about how she'd forgotten to add it to the grocery list again. It was a tiny detail, meaningless to anyone else, but it was wrong. "What's Tommy's teacher's name?" I asked. "Mrs. Anderson," she replied immediately. "Mrs. Patterson." Tommy had been excited all month because Mrs. Patterson was doing a unit on dinosaurs. The Sarah Thing smile never wavered, but something shifted behind her eyes. They were still blue, still the exact shade I'd fallen in love with, but now they held a depth that seemed to go on forever, like looking into a well with no bottom. "You're being silly, Matthew. You're tired and scared. Come inside where it's safe." "Dad," Tommy's voice called from the window. "Mom made your favorite, meatloaf with those little potatoes." I had never liked meatloaf. It was a family joke. Sarah would threaten to make meatloaf whenever I complained about her cooking, because she knew I'd eat anything else without protest. Tommy knew this. We'd laughed about it just last week. The house suddenly felt less like home and more like a trap disguised as salvation. But where was the real Jessica? The actual missing hiker I'd sworn to protect? While I was playing games with these things that wore my family's faces, she could be injured, lost, dying somewhere in the real forest. My phone buzzed again. This time the text was from Tommy's number. "Dad, I'm really scared. These things that look like you and Mom are trying to get into our hiding place. The real Mom is crying. Please help us." Then immediately after, from the same number, "Dad, look out the window. I'm in the kitchen. Why won't you come inside?" I looked up to see Tommy waving at me from the kitchen window, his face bright with innocent excitement. Then I looked down at my phone where words were still appearing. They're making us watch them pretend to be us. It's like looking in a broken mirror. Please don't fall for it. We love you. The thing wearing Sarah's face was walking toward me now, her movements perfectly mimicking my wife's familiar gait. The slight favor of her left foot from an old running injury, The way she always clasped her hands behind her back when she was approaching something carefully. "Matthew, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Why won't you come home?" "Because this isn't my home," I said, backing away. "And you're not my wife." The mask finally began to slip. Sarah's face started to blur around the edges like watercolors running in the rain. Her skin took on a waxy quality, and when she smiled, her teeth were too white, too sharp, like porcelain knives. "But I could be," she said. And now her voice had an echo, as if multiple people were speaking in perfect unison. "I could be better than her. I'll never nag you about working late. I'll never complain when you miss dinner. I'll never ask you to choose between your job and your family. That's exactly why you're not her," I said, understanding flooding through me like ice water. "Sarah drives me crazy sometimes. She argues with me about money and gets mad when I forget to pick up milk. She's not perfect, and that's why I love her." The thing that had been pretending to be my wife let out a shriek that sounded like feedback from a microphone. The house behind her began to melt like candle wax, the windows running together, the door stretching into impossible shapes. Tommy and Emma's faces appeared in the liquefying windows, their features distorting as they pressed against the glass that was no longer glass. "You could have had forever with them," the creature hissed, its voice now revealing the chorus of stolen voices beneath Sarah's familiar tone. "Perfect versions, loving versions, versions that would never leave you or disappoint you or grow old and die." "I don't want perfect versions," I said, and I meant it with every cell in my body. "I want my real family, with all their flaws and arguments and bad moods and human messiness." The creature's face was completely inhuman now, a shifting mass of features that had belonged to other people, other families, other lives it had tried to steal. In the chaos of changing faces, I caught glimpses of Jessica, the real Jessica, her terrified eyes looking out from the monster's constantly shifting visage. "She's still alive," I whispered, understanding hitting me like a physical blow. "You haven't killed her. You've absorbed her, trapped her inside you with all the others." The creature laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bones. "So many families, so many perfect copies I've offered. But humans are so stubborn, so attached to their flawed originals. Do you know how many people I've had to keep when they refused my gift?" Behind the creature, reality was reshaping itself. The false house dissolved completely, revealing a cavern that definitely hadn't been there moments before. The walls were covered in what looked like cocoons. Hundreds of them, each one roughly human-sized, each one pulsing with soft, bioluminescent light. And from within those cocoons I could hear muffled voices calling for help. 23 years I've been perfecting my craft," the creature continued, its form now a constantly shifting nightmare of borrowed features. "Learning to be exactly what each person wants to see. But you're all so broken, so addicted to pain and imperfection. You choose suffering over bliss, reality over paradise." My radio, which I'd thrown away what felt like hours ago, was suddenly back on my belt and crackling to life. But this time, the voice coming through was unmistakably Jessica's. The real Jessica, weak and terrified but definitely alive. "Ranger Walsh, if you can hear this, it feeds on family love. That's what makes it so strong. It takes the people we do anything to save and uses them as bait. Don't let it win. Don't let it take anyone else." The transmission cut to static, but I'd heard enough. I pulled out my emergency flare gun, standard issue for signaling helicopters during search and rescue operations. The creature laughed again, its voice now a cacophony of every person it had ever mimicked. "What are you going to do, burn me? I'm not really here, Matthew. I'm in your mind, in your love, and every doubt you've ever had about whether you're good enough for your family." "Maybe," I said, aiming the flare gun not at the creature, but at the cocoons lining the cavern wall. "But they are." I fired. The flare hit the nearest cocoon and burst into brilliant red light. The creature's scream was deafening, a sound like every window in the world breaking at once. As the light spread, the cocoons began to crack and dissolve, releasing their prisoners in streams of silver mist that swirled around the cavern like liquid starlight. Jessica stumbled out first, real and solid and breathing, followed by dozens of others. Hikers, campers, locals who'd gone missing over the decades. They all looked dazed but alive, blinking in the strange light of the dissolving supernatural realm. The creature was changing again, but this time it wasn't taking on human features. It was collapsing in on itself, becoming something that hurt to look at directly, a tangle of hungry darkness that had been feeding on stolen love for decades. As the last of the cocoons dissolved, it gave one final, frustrated shriek and imploded into nothing, leaving only the smell of ozone and the sound of wind through pine trees. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. I was standing in perfectly normal forest, in broad daylight, surrounded by confused but very much alive missing persons. My radio was working perfectly. My GPS showed correct coordinates, and the sun was exactly where it should be for 11:30 a.m. Jessica was sitting against a tree, weak but coherent, looking around with the same bewildered expression as everyone else. "What happened?" she asked. "I remember hiking and then nothing. Where are we?" My phone rang. Real ringtone, real caller ID showing my real wife's real face. I answered with hands that were finally steady. "Matthew?" Sarah's voice was thick with relief. "Thank God. I've been trying to call you for hours. Your station said you weren't responding to radio calls. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. "Is everyone home? Tommy? Emma?" "Everyone's fine. Tommy's building a fort in the living room, and Emma just texted from her dorm about some boy she met in chemistry class. We're all exactly where we should be, doing exactly the normal, imperfect things we always do." "Good," I said, watching as Jessica and the other rescued people began to make their way toward the voices of the actual search and rescue team that was approaching through the trees. "That's exactly how I want it." "When will you be home?" Sarah asked. "Soon," I promised. "I just need to finish this rescue operation. Then I'm coming home to my beautifully flawed, perfectly imperfect family, and I'm never taking any of it for granted again." After I hung up, Jessica approached me, her color returning as the shock wore off. "Ranger Walsh? I know this sounds crazy, but I need to ask you something. Did anything strange happen while I was missing? I have these memories that don't make sense, things that couldn't be real." I looked at her for a long moment. This young woman who reminded me so much of my daughter, who'd almost been lost to something that fed on the very love that made life worth living. "Sometimes the forest plays tricks," I said finally. "The important thing is that you're safe now." She nodded, accepting the non-answer, and I helped her toward the approaching rescue team. But as we walked, I caught her glancing back over her shoulder, the way people do when they know they've escaped something terrible but can't quite remember what it was. I understood that feeling completely. That night, I sat at our kitchen table watching Sarah make actual meatloaf, as a joke, because she'd noticed I seemed extra appreciative of her cooking lately. Tommy was telling me about his day at school, getting half the details wrong and all of his enthusiasm right. Emma had called from college to complain about her roommate's music being too loud, and I'd listened to every word like it was the most beautiful symphony ever composed. Perfect? Not even close. Real? Absolutely. And that made all the difference in the world. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Jessica during those missing hours. I read every single one. My name is Joshua, and I should have listened to the warnings about October fog in Shenandoah National Park. But I was the outsider, the transfer from Arizona who thought Virginia mist was just weather, not something that could think, hunt, and swallow people whole while keeping them alive inside its gray belly. It was October 15th, 2018, 3:47 p.m., according to my Garmin watch, when I watched Emily Henderson disappear into what I thought was ordinary fog. The temperature had dropped from 68 to 52 degrees in 20 minutes, and thick gray clouds were rolling through the hollow between Hawksbill Mountain and Stony Man like a living thing. My coffee from that morning had turned bitter in my thermos, metallic and wrong, but I blamed it on the cheap grounds from the ranger station. Emily was maybe 30 feet ahead of me on the Appalachian Trail, her bright red North Face jacket cutting through the autumn colors like a beacon. She'd been hiking alone, something that should have set off alarm bells, but I was focused on my GPS coordinates and trying to remember which trail connected to Old Rag. The fog rolled in faster than any weather pattern I'd seen in my 3 months stationed here, moving against the wind direction with an intelligence that made my skin crawl. "Hey," I called out, my voice echoing strangely in the sudden gray. "Emily, the visibility's dropping fast." But she couldn't hear me, or she was walking towards something I couldn't see. The fog wasn't moving like normal fog. It flowed uphill against gravity, reaching for her like gray fingers. My radio crackled with static. Not the usual chatter from dispatch, but something that sounded almost like whispers. The hair on my arm stood up and my mouth went dry with a taste that reminded me of pennies and fear. That's when I saw Emily stop walking. She stood perfectly still in the gray wall that had swallowed the trail ahead, her red jacket the only color visible in the unnatural mist. Then she turned around, and I could see her face. Completely calm, dreamy almost, like she was sleepwalking. "Emily!" I shouted, running toward her, my Danner boot slipping on wet leaves. "Don't go in there!" But she walked backward into the fog, her eyes open but seeing something I couldn't. The gray consumed her red jacket inch by inch, and then she was gone. Not disappeared, consumed, digested, swallowed by something that wasn't weather at all. I reached the spot where she'd vanished, and the fog recoiled from me like I'd interrupted its meal. For just a moment I could swear I heard her voice from inside it, muffled, panicked, but alive, calling my name like she knew I was there but couldn't reach me. That was 6 hours ago. Now it's 9:52 p.m. My phone battery is at 12%, and the conscious fog has surrounded me completely. My radio died an hour ago, spitting out what sounded like Emily's voice saying, "Joshua, it's so cold in here. Why can't I move my arms?" before cutting to static. The fog moves when I move, keeping exactly 10 feet away from me in all directions like it's hurting me somewhere specific. When I try to backtrack toward the main trail, it thickens to the point where I can't see my own hands. When I move deeper into the woods following what I think might be Emily's path, it thins just enough to let me pass. It's learning my patterns, testing me. My wife Sarah texted me at 5:30. "How's the first day going in the new park? Kids want a video call before bed." I couldn't text back. Couldn't tell her I'd watched someone disappear into something impossible, something that shouldn't exist outside of the nightmares I'd been having since I transferred here from the desert. The local rangers had tried to warn me about October fog, but I dismissed it as mountain superstition. Old Jim Bradshaw, who'd worked Shenandoah for 37 years, had pulled me aside my first week and said, "Boy, you ever see fog that moves uphill, you turn around and walk the other way. Don't matter what duty calls for." I'd laughed. Fog was fog. Weather was weather. God, I was such an arrogant fool. My daughter Madison's drawing is in my shirt pocket, a crayon picture of our family holding hands under a yellow sun. The paper is damp with sweat and fog moisture, the waxy colors bleeding together. She'd handed it to me at breakfast saying, "Daddy, this is for when you get scared at your new job." 8 years old and wiser than her father. The fog is getting denser now, pressing closer. 9 feet away. 8. The temperature has dropped to what feels like 40 degrees, and my breath comes out in white puffs that the gray mist immediately absorbs. Every exhale feeds it, makes it stronger. I can hear Emily again. Not her voice on my dead radio, but actually hear her, somewhere inside the fog wall that surrounds me. She's crying now, sobbing words I can't quite make out. It sounds like she's trying to warn me about something. My heart is hammering against my ribs, 130 beats per minute according to my watch. The fog knows I'm afraid. It can smell the adrenaline in my sweat, taste the cortisol in my breath. It's been feeding on human fear for decades, maybe centuries, and I'm just the latest meal delivery. The thing that terrifies me most isn't that Emily is dead. It's that she's not. She's still conscious inside that gray nightmare, still aware, still trying to move arms and legs that no longer obey her commands, still trying to scream through a throat that no longer connects to air, still hoping someone will save her. My phone's flashlight cuts exactly 6 inches into the fog before the beam just stops, like the light itself is being digested. The fog doesn't reflect illumination. It devours it, adding the energy to its own impossible mass. I've been walking in circles for hours following what I thought were Emily's footprints, but now I realize the fog has been creating the tracks, leading me deeper into the woods where no one will hear me scream when it finally decides I've served my purpose as bait. The conscript fog doesn't just hunt randomly. It's strategic, intelligent. It took Emily because she was alone, vulnerable. But it left me alive because it knew I'd follow, knew my guilt would drive me deeper into its territory than any rational person would go. 7 feet away now. I can feel its presence like a physical weight, pressing against my skull from all directions. My vision is starting to tunnel, either from oxygen deprivation or pure terror. The fog isn't just surrounding me, it's trying to get inside me, creeping into my nostrils with each breath, tasting my fear from the inside out. Emily's voice is clearer now, close enough that I could reach out and touch her if the fog would let me. She's begging me to run, to leave her, to save myself. But I can't. Not when her parents called me directly at 7 p.m., sobbing into the phone, asking if I'd found their daughter yet. "She's all we have," her mother had whispered. "Please don't give up on her." If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Joshua's situation? Comment below. The fog contracts to 6 feet. 5. My skin feels like it's crawling with invisible insects, and every breath tastes like copper and decay. This is how it feeds. Slowly, savoring the terror, letting its victims understand exactly what's happening to them before the final consumption. But then something impossible happens. My phone, which died completely an hour ago, suddenly blazes to life with a video call from my daughter Madison. Her face fills the screen, impossibly clear despite the supernatural interference that's blocked all other communication. "Daddy?" Her voice cuts through the fog like a blade. "I had a bad dream about you. Are you okay?" The fog recoils, actually physically pulls back as if Madison's innocent voice is causing it pain. For the first time in hours, I can see more than 5 feet in any direction. "Madison, baby, My voice cracks. "Daddy's in a little trouble right now." "I know," she says, and her 8-year-old eyes look far too wise. "The scary gray thing is trying to eat you." "But Daddy, remember what Grandpa used to say about monsters?" My father's voice echoes in my memory. "Monsters are just shadows, son. They only have the power you give them." Madison continues, "You have to be brave, Daddy. Like in my drawing. We're all holding hands, remember? Even when you can't see us, we're there." The fog writhes around me, agitated, confused. It can't absorb the love in my daughter's voice, can't digest the pure connection between father and child. The supernatural intelligence that controls it has never encountered anything like this. Love as a weapon, family as armor. I reach into my shirt pocket and pull out Madison's drawing. The crayon figures are smeared but still recognizable. Me, Sarah, Madison, little Connor, all holding hands under that yellow sun. As I hold it up, the fog retreats another 3 feet. "Emily!" I shout into the gray mass. "Emily, if you can hear me, I'm going to get you out. Hold on." And somehow, impossibly, I hear her respond, "Joshua, I can move my hand. Something's changing." The fog is fighting itself now, its unnatural unity breaking down. Part of it still wants to feed, to consume, to add Emily and me to its collection of conscious victims. But another part, maybe the part that still remembers being human, being loved, is trying to let us go. I start walking toward Emily's voice, holding Madison's drawing like a shield. The fog parts reluctantly, revealing glimpses of the real forest beneath its supernatural shroud. Pine needles, granite boulders, the actual trail that will lead us home. "Daddy?" Madison's voice comes through my phone again. "Tell Emily her mommy loves her too. Tell her it's time to come home." And suddenly Emily stumbles out of the fog wall 20 feet ahead of me, gasping, sobbing, but alive. Her red jacket is gray with moisture and something else. Something that smells like old graves and forgotten fears. But she's moving, breathing, conscious. The fog lets out what can only be described as a scream. Not a sound, but a vibration that shakes the ground beneath our feet and makes every tree in the hollow creak and sway. Then it dissipates, not like normal mist that gradually thins, but like something dying, collapsing in on itself until there's nothing left but clean mountain air and the smell of autumn leaves. My phone goes dark again, but not before I hear Madison whisper, "I love you, Daddy. Come home safe." Emily and I hold each other up as we stumble back to the main trail, neither of us speaking about what just happened. How do you explain to people that fog can think, can hunt, can keep its victims alive and conscious inside its gray belly while it feeds on their terror? How do you explain that love, real, unconditional family love, is apparently the one thing that ancient hungry darkness cannot digest? We reach the parking lot at 11:43 p.m. Emily's parents are waiting with search and rescue teams, and they fall on their daughter like she's been returned from the dead, which in a way, she has. Later, as I write my incident report, I stick to the facts that people will believe. Emily got disoriented in heavy fog. I found her suffering from mild hypothermia and exposure. We made it back safely. No mention of conscious mist or supernatural predators or my daughter's impossible phone call, but I keep Madison's drawing in my shirt pocket now, always. And I tell my kids I love them every single day, because I learned something in that gray nightmare that will never leave me. Love isn't just an emotion. It's a force. It's armor against the darkness that hunts at the edges of our world. And sometimes when the monsters come for us, it's the only weapon we have. Tomorrow, I'm putting in for a transfer back to Arizona. Shenandoah National Park can find another outsider ranger, one who doesn't know about the October fog, one who hasn't seen what I've seen. Because now I know the truth. Some forests have appetites, some mists have malice, and some things that look like weather are actually ancient, patient predators waiting for their next meal. The conscious fog is still out there, somewhere in those Virginia hollows, healing from whatever damage my daughter's love did to it, waiting for the next lonely hiker, the next overconfident ranger, the next person who thinks supernatural stories are just mountain superstition. It's waiting, watching, learning, and it's still hungry. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror and comment your theory about what really happened to Emily in that fog. I read every single one.